It's come and it's gone. Game of Thrones. The final was on Monday night, or, well, for me, Monday morning, because I watched it at 2 a.m. And I've got to say, my thoughts on it was that it was quite a phenomenal ending. It was a very good, very emotional ending. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect going into the final because of the penultimate episode, the night, the week before, with Daenerys burning King's Landing basically to the ground. All I knew is that, in my opinion, I thought, Jon's going to have to kill her, or Arya is, Daenerys is going to have to go. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my iPad and putting my charger in. But yeah, anyway, going in, I felt a bit sad because it is the last episode. There's not going to be any more, and I'm a little bit nervous because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, that were my thoughts on it, and I have actually written notes because a lot happened. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at that and reading from it and discussing how I felt about the whole episode and also just the whole Game of Thrones in general. And before I even start going into depth about it, I'm wearing a Game of Thrones Jon Snow t-shirt. There we go. Because for me, my favourite character has always been Jon Snow. I've kind of always related to Jon Snow and his story, and he's been the hero, like, I know other people, like, various others, like Daenerys, and, but Jon Snow has always been, he's always been my character. So, yeah. Anyway, the finale. Let's start with Jon. At the very beginning of that episode, it was quite obvious that Jon was in turmoil. He basically just watched the woman he loved and his aunt burn innocent people alive, even when the battle had won for King's Landing. Even when the bells were ringing, there was no need to keep fighting. Daenerys just went crazy, and Jon was in turmoil because he was in love with her. He was in love with Daenerys. He had a very, very, very big chat with Tyrion, who was like, you need to get rid of her. Regardless of your feelings, regardless of our feelings, because Tyrion admitted that he loved Daenerys, not to the success that Jon did, but he loved her. So yeah, like he was absolutely in turmoil. And he thought, this could be fixable, I think. So, yeah, he met up with Daenerys. So I'm trying to read what this says. Yeah, he met up with Daenerys in the throne room, which was actually a prophecy fulfilled. Because I think in season 4, Daenerys had a vision when she was looking for the dragons who had been stolen from her. She had a vision of the Iron Throne in what looked like snow, but turned out to be ash from her dragon, in the ruins of the Great Hall in King's Landing. And, excuse me, funny enough, they ended up there. And she just got one touch of the Iron Throne, and she turned around, and there's Jon. And Jon's trying to say to her, this has got to stop. You don't need to keep going on to try and free Westeros, is because she said that in her speech. And basically, when he saw that she couldn't be turned around, that she was actually too far gone in her madness, he stabbed her. He stabbed her, and it must have broken him. It must have really, really broken him, because he was in love with her. And looking back on Jon's journey, you know, the two women he ever loved, they've died. And yeah, so it was a bit, you know, I really felt for Jon in this episode. I really felt for him. I felt it was a bit unfair because he was then put in jail by what's his name? Sorry, I'm awful at by Grey Worm, and he was there for a while, and while that was happening, I think the Starks wanted Jon free. I think everyone wanted, you know, a conclusion to everything, and that's why they all met up. But basically, when Bran became king, which is a spoiler by the way, but he becomes king, which for me was a big shock. Bran becomes king. I think it was Bran who said to exile Jon from Westeros, put him in the Night's Watch, and you know, he can go over the wall to the west. No, not to the west, over the wall, and yeah. Which I was a bit like, personally, I wanted Jon to take the throne. I wanted Jon to be the king. Jon or Sansa, and that was my personal, you know, thoughts, to take the throne. But basically, I found with Jon one of the most touching moments was when he went to the Night's Watch, to the wall, and it just opened up and there was Tormund waiting for him, which made me go, that's just, you know, that's kind of a perfect ending for Jon's story, because with Tormund's people, with the Wildlings, it was where he kind of was at home, you know. It was where he belonged, where he felt he was probably at home, because when he was in the Starks, he was never really at home. He was never treated well. I mean, Catelyn Stark hated him because she thought that Ned Stark had an affair, which in reality, Ned Stark was actually protecting Jon from being killed because he was the rightful heir to the throne and the Targaryens, you know. So yeah, to see Jon go off with all of them, with people who actually looked at him as a king, and Tormund who looked at him as a king, you know, that was just, it was beautiful. And even better was that the fans finally got their Jon and Ghost moment. That Jon fussed and stroked Ghost. And for me, I was like, yeah, I'm happy with that. I am really happy with that. So yeah, I kind of would like to see a Jon Snow TV show on its own, see him with Tormund, but obviously I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, Jon's always been my favourite. I'm going to now go on to Daenerys. All the way through, I've always liked Daenerys, I followed her, but it was the penultimate episode when she went absolutely like bloodthirstily crazy. I was just a bit upset. I was like, what? I think most of the fans were like, what have you done? What? Why? And I pretty much did think going into the finale, yeah, she's gonna die. She's gonna have to die, and it's gonna have to be Jon. So it started at the very beginning with something which looked like it should be out of Star Wars, because the cinematography of King's Landing in rubble, Daenerys' army is all lined up, and there's a dragon upon with her, and there was that awesome scene where it came up the main steps and rose before her, rose to where she was, and wings kind of unfolded out from behind her as if they were part of her, which was, it actually was Drogon the dragon. I think it was Drogon. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. To any hardcore fans, I'm still trying to get names right in Game of Thrones. I will be reading the book soon. And yeah, Drogon flew away, and I was like, "That is awesome. That's an awesome shot. That is just amazing." But thing is, with Daenerys in this, she'd crossed the line. She wanted world domination, as she said in her speech, and I think the most turning point for Jon and Tyrion and Arya, who was listening to her conversation, was well, when she mentioned Winterfell. Jon and Arya looked at each other and were like, "Okay, this is too much." And even I was going, because I was watching it with my friend Leona, and I was going, what is she on about? Why why is she saying that she's going to free everyone when they're already free? And no, it just wasn't right. And so basically, it went to her realizing her vision because she was in the throne room, and she was just so like intent on winning Jon over that she was wrapped up in her own madness, and I don't think she even saw Jon's betrayal coming, because she thought, I can twist him round. And yeah, like, it must have been a bit disappointing with Emilia Clarke to see how much she loved her character, and suddenly in one episode she goes crazy. But there was the Targaryen legacy that her father was mad, and she had the traits of the Mad Queen in her. Yeah, so I was a bit sad about Daenerys going. I'm gonna be honest, I was, but I wasn't surprised. And then there was that awesome bit with her dragon. Like, when she died, it was so touching that he knew his mum had gone. He knew it. And after watching Thronecast just now before this recording this video, I actually realised from watching the video of Thronecast that basically the dragon didn't really blame Jon. He blamed the throne, and which made me think, oh, that's cool. The dragon actually understands humans and understood his mum. And when he melted the throne, I was like, wow. Like, I was like, no one can take that throne now. And I just found that amazing, because I was like, well, where can we go from here? Where can we go from here? So yeah, that whole thing was just really good, really, really amazing. I'm now going to go on to Tyrion. For me, Tyrion has always been the second favourite character. Well, third actually, because the Hound is in another level, but he wasn't in this episode. But Tyrion, I felt quite emotional over Tyrion. Throughout the whole of Game of Thrones, he has been treated as if he was a mistake, a monster by his family, by everyone really, as if he's a joke. And then he became Hand of the Queen and the Hand of Daenerys, and I kind of saw that as a good arc for him. Like, yes, go Tyrion. But then, I got worried for him in the finale. I got worried because he obviously walked through at the very beginning the devastation of King's Landing, and literally he'd lost all respect for Daenerys. I think any feelings he had for Daenerys was gone after he saw what she did, and the way he looked at her, the anger in his eyes and the hurt, and she said, "You betrayed me," and he was like, "Yeah, well, you decimated children and people, innocents." And the fact that he looked at her and saw that she did not care, that was powerful and also scary. Because when he took the I think it's medallion or the symbol off him and took it down the steps, I thought, oh my gosh, the dragon's gonna set fire to him. He's gone. And to see him being put into chains, sitting in prison, he then had a chat, that amazingly powerful chat with Jon, saying you've got to get rid of her, and then like, and the fact that he was spared was just, for me, it was a miracle, because I honestly thought Tyrion was gone. I thought he was a goner, and then after Daenerys' death, he was still a captor because Grey Worm, you know, I think the Unsullied army had still had King's Landing, and everyone had met up saying, look, we don't want to fight anymore. We're tired of fighting. We need a conclusion out of all this. And the fact that Tyrion was still in chains, like Jon had been, Tyrion had made a lot of mistakes. He knew that, and Bran knew that. And when Tyrion came up with the idea of Bran being the king, because Bran knew all of the past of Westeros, and he knew how not to make any mistakes, and also the fact that Tyrion came up with the idea that when Bran goes, they have to have a vote, because obviously Bran couldn't have children if the past mistakes were from the offsprings of, you know, it was like families. So basically, Tyrion became again the hand of the king, hand to Bran. Sorry, not Fran. And he was surprised, because he was like, "No, I don't want it." And Bran's like, "Well, you don't really have a choice because I'm making you." This was kind of a redemptive arc for Tyrion, because he did make some mistakes, even though he meant well. His heart was in the right place, and I think Bran saw that. And I was happy with this outcome. The Starks, when all the council was seated together, and it showed that Sansa was now Queen of the North, which for me, after watching all that Sansa had gone through, from starting out to be an absolute pain in the arse, like in Joffrey and Little Brat, and then suddenly going through the arcs of being married to Ramsay, and then basically rescuing the Battle of the Bastards. For me to see that she was Queen of the North was just wonderful. I was like, yes, because I think I kind of wanted Sansa to be queen as well of the Iron Throne, but to have her queen in the North, to have her stick with saying we will not bend the knee, the North will not bend the knee ever again to someone, it's just absolutely fantastic. I could not have been more happier with that ending. Arya, I think chose not to go back to the North, go back to Winterfell, because she'd kind of outgrown it. She'd kind of begun her own new identity now. She was much more at home outside of Winterfell. I don't think she ever liked being in Winterfell. There were too many memories there, too many of her before, too many links to her past. She was actually sorry. She was actually someone completely different. And for her to go west to where no one knew what was at the west, which I honestly can't believe, but she goes, oh, that's where the maps end, which it makes sense. And there was a lovely little bit where Jon said, oh, you have Needle, which I picked up again from Thronecast. He was kind of hinting that her journey of being like the assassin girl might not be over. There's going to be new people, new enemies, and she can forge her own identity as, you know, a faceless assassin. You know, the many faces of them. And I like that idea, and I kind of would love to see that in a TV show about Arya doing that. But obviously I doubt that's going to happen, because HBO have already got planned other series, which are prequels, lined up. The biggest shock apart from Daenerys dying, out of this whole finale was actually Bran becoming king, which it now makes sense, because he's a three-eyed raven. He knows every mistake of the past, and basically he has no allegiance to anyone, and he's kind of a safe bet. But and he's kind of no longer a Stark either. But when Tyrion said Bran's to be king, and then Bran said, "Well, why do you think I'm here?" Because Tyrion was surprised that Bran knew. I was kind of like, well, that's a bit cocky for someone who spent most of his time through the whole of sorry, just got a message then. Most of his time, like for the majority of seasons 6, 7, and 8, and 9, I think, looking like he's high as a kite, and then suddenly goes, "Oh yeah, I'm the king now." I was a bit like, and his real sorry messages, and basically he was a bit cocky, and I was like, oh, like I honestly didn't like that. But basically, you can't choose who was going to be king. The writers did choose. Now we're going to go on to Grey Worm. I liked Grey Worm before, but I think it was because he had Missandei, and then suddenly, when Daenerys was, going crazy, he suddenly went really mad and kind of evil, in my opinion. I didn't like that at all, and he was baying for blood for Jon and Tyrion. He was baying for them to like die. He wanted revenge, and I was just like, why is he acting like this? I get that Cersei beheaded Missandei, but he was just so overtaken with bloodlust. And the very fact that he said that the Unsullys were going to go to Narth, where Missandei live, kind of makes sense as well, because he didn't want anything to do with the decision of Bran being king or anything like that. And also, his oath was broken when Daenerys died, so he had no allegiance to Westeros. So it was best that he took the Unsullied back. There was a lovely part. Now moving on to Brienne, there was a lovely part where, even though she had her heart broken, there was Brienne as basically master of the King's Guard, and she was wearing this new Raven outfit, which might have hinted to the three-eyed Raven, which was Bran being king. I'm not sure. I'm just assuming here. And basically, she was writing in the Book of Brothers, which is basically the book where every night, every high guard of King's Landing, more or less, their deeds were written in the book, and she was writing Jaime's deeds, and it was quite a touching one. That even though he broke her heart, she didn't say anything bad. She actually wrote that he died defending his queen, and I thought that was lovely. Like, she was the only one who showed kind of honor throughout the whole of Game of Thrones and protected anyone. There was a lovely moment where Tyrion, and it was quite funny. It was a funny moment where Tyrion was setting up the council table, and he was nervous because obviously he wanted to, he wanted to make up for his mistakes, and Bran gave him that opportunity as Hand of the King. So he was like nervously sitting at the table, adjusting the chairs, and then everyone came along, and just messed it up. And on that table there was Brienne, but also there was Bronn, who finally got his castle. I'm assuming he got Highgarden, but he also became Master of Coin, which was Littlefinger's job ages ago. And I think Bronn said that he was going to open a brothel up, and there was a little argument saying, "I'm pretty sure this is more important than brothels." But Bronn brought an element of humour to the whole of the table, because when they mentioned Drogon, they said, "Where is Drogon?" And before anyone could answer, before Bran could answer, because I'm still assuming Bran could connect with the dragon, Bronn said, "As far away from here as possible is good enough with me," and which is, kind of what everyone was thinking. But yeah, it was good to see Bronn there, and that Tyrion had given him what he needed. Davos was at the table. Davos was another character I liked. He was like the father figure and advisor to Jon, when Jon was king in the north and meeting Daenerys. And basically, Davos was master of ships, which is kind of fitting because in his past, he was a smuggler, a pirate. So to have him now as a legally master of the ships was a very touching very touching moment. And then there was Sam, Sam went to the library city. I can't remember the name of it. I'm really sorry. And he's now a Grand Maester to the king, and it was like, yeah, that makes sense. That sounds like that. He was more interested in books than being on the Night's Watch, and fighting. That's his expertise, and I was really happy with that. I did notice, and this is before I go, I did notice one thing. That the Game of Thrones did a lovely bit for Jon, and lovely bit for the end of the show, really, where as Jon walked away from the wall, it showed all the wildlings, all the people beyond the wall going back into the forest, and the snow was kind of melting, and there was grass coming up around the trees. And it made me remember that this show actually started in that forest, and it ended in that forest. It was kind of like a full circle moment. So I because I'm a writer, I found that quite special. If I could think of a favourite moment of Game of Thrones, and there are many, there are absolutely many, and I will be revisiting Game of Thrones again and again and again. And I've even got, and I'm going to lend a friend this, and I'm going to trust her with it. I've even got this. Season 1 to 4. It's only season 1 to 4, but it's an inside look of Game of Thrones, and I'm actually this week also going to buy Longclaw, Jon's sword. If I had a favourite moment on Game of Thrones, for me, the episode which stood out the most for me and impacted me so much was actually the Battle of the Bastards, Jon versus Ramsay. That, I had never seen anything like that on TV, and I just want to say a great big thank you to HBO and to the two guys who made all of this. Thank you for showing something that I'd never seen on TV before, and it has impacted my mind. This show has been incredible. This show from season 1 to 8 has been absolutely incredible, and I have been privileged to watch it. I initially wasn't going to join the bandwagon because of the amount of friends going, "Oh, watch Game of Thrones." I'm glad I did. I am honestly glad I did. And I am looking forward now, as I've heard, to the prequel which is being made in Ireland. And yeah, I want to see more. I'm not going to lie. So, from a Game of Thrones fan looking out to everyone else, the words of Jon Snow, my watch has ended.